Hello everyone, my name is Christopher Liam Rose. I'm an author, mentor, life coach, motivational speaker, evangelist, musician, and activist. In this podcast and this audio, we're going to be sharing a message. I've been encouraging and making podcasts and audios for Spiritually Helping Other People podcasts to help humanity learn about spiritual change, to learn about Jesus Christ, Jehovah, and Buddha, and to learn about the no self and selflessness, helping other people, helping the animals, helping the universe. So within this podcast and within this audio, we're going to be talking about a specific message. So the message we're going to share today is suffering, pain, and adversity. So we're just going to be talking about suffering, pain, and adversity, and how we can overcome suffering, pain, and adversity within our lives and do the work of ministry, do the work of helping other people, giving back and making a difference. Now, in life, we're all going to go through suffering, pain, and adversity. Each human being will go through their own life experiences and their own journey. So it's very important to realize that suffering and pain and adversity is inevitable, and we're all going to experience it in some part of our life. But what we can do to understand ourselves and to learn about the suffering, pain, and adversity we're going to go through is basically go through a spiritual change and a spiritual transformation. Because we can't stop what suffering, pain, and adversities we're going to experience in life, each human being has their own suffering and pain and adversity that they go through, and it's going to be unique and different for every human being. Some people may lose relationships, lose children, lose husbands and wives, lose partners, lose relationships, lose jobs, lose careers, go through illness, go through suffering, go through pain, loss of a home, loss of finances, loss of jobs. So the list can go on with what people go through with suffering, pain, and adversity. But it's important to realize, how do we overcome that, and what do we do to overcome the suffering, pain, and adversities we go through. So this is when we need to go for a spiritual change. So what is spiritual change? Spiritual change is when you change your spiritual life into the spiritual psyche and the psychological mind. So when you go through a change in the psyche and the psychological mind in your spiritual life, that's where you can overcome suffering, pain, and adversities. Now, Jesus Christ and Buddha were both talking about overcoming suffering, pain, and adversities. Jesus Christ was talking about the kingdom of God and the kingdom of heaven. And if we find salvation within life, we can find our true spiritual enlightenment, spiritual freedom, and spiritual liberation. Buddha was talking about nirvana, the heaven on earth, learning about ourselves, finding spiritual enlightenment, and actually understanding that we do not need to live in suffering, pain, and adversities for all of our lives, and we can overcome it in our own way. So going through the process of a spiritual change, which is basically doing the 5 spiritual practices: prayer, meditation, mindfulness, walking, journaling. Going through the process of the 5 spiritual practices will help you to spiritually change. This will help you to find spiritual freedom and spiritual liberation. Now, in life, we all are going to go through suffering, pain, and adversity, which I'm trying to encourage the listeners and the viewers that are watching this content. So don't be afraid of suffering, pain, and adversity. Don't be frightened of suffering, pain, and adversity. But instead, use it to channel and motivate you and inspire you. Now, even for my own journey, I've been through homelessness and mental health difficulties. So I've been through a lot of suffering, pain, and adversity in my life. But now I've used my suffering, pain, and adversity to be a light and inspiration to others and support people in what they're going through. So what I'm trying to say is, it doesn't matter where you come from in your life. You could have the most traumatic past, the horrible experiences, the horrible challenges within life. But you can overcome your suffering, pain, and adversities, and you can find spiritual freedom and spiritual liberation. But you must go through a spiritual change in order to do that. So how do you really overcome suffering, pain, and adversities? What do you have to do? You have to go through a spiritual change first by doing the 5 spiritual practices: prayer, meditation, mindfulness, walking, journaling. Then once you've actually gone through the process of spiritual change, which is a change in the psyche and the psychological mind, then you do the 5 levels of helping other people. Level 1, volunteering, the good level in helping other people. Level 2, jobs, careers, employment. The great level in helping other people. Level 3, business and entrepreneurship. The highest level in helping other people. Level 4, faith and spiritual. The spiritual levels in helping other people. Level 5, spiritually helping other people who helping other people. The teaching level in helping other people. Now, in order to overcome suffering, pain, and adversities, you go through spiritual change by doing the 5 spiritual practices, and then do the 5 levels of helping other people. And by that, you start to live a life of the no self and selflessness, which is basically a spiritual transformation and spiritual change within yourself. If you live the no self and selflessness, there's no more self, and you know thyself. And this is what we can actually call spiritual enlightenment. Because what happens when you go through a spiritual change, you actually understand yourself as a human being, and you gain the insights, the knowledge, the wisdom, and the understanding, and the attainment to obviously learn about yourself, which is very difficult to do. Sometimes in life we have to go through suffering, pain, and adversities before we understand who we are as a human being. Our characteristics, our personality, our qualities, our skills, our behavior, our mannerisms, our morals, our values, our beliefs, what's important to us. So suffering, pain, and adversity will come in life, and we all experience it. But what's important to learn is how we're going to overcome it, how we're going to get past the suffering, pain, and adversities, and live our spiritual life purpose, our spiritual calling, and our dharma. So I encourage the listener, you can overcome suffering, pain, and adversity in your life. You can live more freer, more awakened, more spiritual, more liberated, and more enlightened. But you have to find a spiritual change within yourself, and you have to do the 5 spiritual practices and the 5 levels of helping other people. Now, because suffering, pain, and adversity always affects the human being's psyche and psychological mind, we need to do a spiritual practice to obviously help overcome that, and to process that, and to deal with that. So that's why the spiritual practices become very important. And if you do develop a spiritual practice, you connect with Jesus Christ, Jehovah, and Buddha. Jesus Christ, Jehovah, and Buddha wants us to go through a spiritual change. So the spiritual change becomes the most important thing within the psyche and the psychological mind. You're not meant to just live with your suffering, pain, and adversities for all of your life. You're meant to overcome your suffering, pain, and adversities, and use that to be the light and source, inspiration and motivation and source for helping other people, giving back and making a difference. So if you have gone through trauma, suffering, pain, and adversity, use that as inspiration, as motivation to encourage you to move forward and to reach your future and your spiritual destiny. So we all have a light that's already within inside of us. So the light is within you, right? We need to discover that light and make that be the source of inspiration to the world. You can't change the suffering, pain, and adversity you'll go through in life. All human beings will go through it in their own ways. So this is something in life that you can't change. But you can change your psyche and your psychological mind. If you change your psyche and your psychological mind and find spiritual enlightenment, spiritual freedom, spiritual liberation, and spiritual awakening, then you can change the suffering, pain, and adversities you experience into a source of light and inspiration for others. And that's the one thing that's very important. That's something I've done in my own personal life due to being homeless and having mental health difficulties. But all human beings can do the same thing. You just have to find the light that's within yourself and find out who you truly are as a human being. So the no self and the selflessness helps you to discover who you are as a human being. So the only way you can discover the no self and selflessness is when you've gone through a spiritual change within the psyche and the psychological mind. So helping other people, helping animals, helping the universe is very important. Going through a spiritual change becomes the most important thing in life, and all human beings must go through a spiritual change. So I encourage the listeners, you can find spiritual enlightenment. You can be free from suffering, pain, and adversity. You can actually end suffering, pain, and adversity once you discover the no self and selflessness. Do the 5 spiritual practices: prayer, meditation, mindfulness, walking and journaling. And then do the 5 levels of helping other people. Level 1, volunteering. Level 2, jobs, careers, employment. Level 3, business, entrepreneurship. Level 4, faith and spiritual. Level 5, spiritually helping other people, helping other people. And overcome the suffering, pain and adversities you experience in your life. Don't be frightened of it, don't be scared of it. Use it as motivation and inspiration to move you forward into the future. Hope this podcast has helped. Thank you for listening. Take care now. Bye.